Howdy everyone, Husky here, and today I'm going to show you guys how to make clothing in paint.net. And this is just a beginner video. I'll do an intermediate tutorial in the future, and I'll also do a GIMP tutorial on how to make Roblox clothing in the future as well. So, the first thing we need to do is we need to get the templates for the shirt and the pants. So, the first thing we gotta go to is the Create tab here. And then we go to shirts. Now, keep in mind, you do need Builders Club and 10 Robux to upload a shirt or pants. So, I wouldn't do this unless you have a friend that is willing to upload these for you or you have it yourself. And by Builders Club, I mean premium. I'm sorry. Roblox just had to change that for some reason. Builders Club makes a lot more sense. But at any rate, it says here, did you use the template? If not, download it here. And you definitely want the template because it has the correct dimensions of everything, and you won't have any weird lines if you follow this template exactly. So, we're going to save image as, and then download it as shirt template. Save it, and then for the pants, same thing. You go to pants. If it loads, there we go. And then download it here. It looks the same, but you can tell them apart because of this picture here on the left. And then just save image as pants template. And make sure you save them somewhere you can easily access them too. So now that we have them installed, and if you don't have paint.net, I'll have the link down in the description below. But we're going to go to File, Open, and then we're going to go to Pictures. Well, that's where I saved mine, Pictures. And I'm going to start with the shirt. And if you want to zoom in, just hit Control and then scroll wheel, and it'll allow you to scroll in. And the middle click moves pans the picture around. So, the first thing we're going to do is grab this magic wand, and we're going to select, you can hold shift and select all the colors, but also hold control to select multiple. So it selects all the colors. It is going to select this too, but we're not going to worry about that. Unless you really need to follow this guide. But for the sake of this video, I'll keep it just so you guys have a visual. But you just select all of this. You can hit delete or Control X, and then you'll have all these letters. If you don't want to do the magic wand, you could also just do the rectangle select and zoom in and just select all of it and just Control X. And just do that for each of the sections. I don't know why they feel the need to, well, I guess to label them, but they could label them above. And the thing is, you have to be careful about where you're selecting too, because it's kind of hard to tell what you're selecting. Okay. So now we have the cleared up template, and for your sake, I'm going to quickly, for you guys' sake for understanding, I'm going to quickly label these. So, let me do that real quick. Alright, hopefully you guys can read all this. Sorry that this part right here is blurry, but basically, yes, this is the neck. This is going to be like your character's ribs, the left and right side. This is the back, this is the bottom of the torso, so like right here where it's orange. And then you have your shoulders, which are this. The front of your arm. The right side of your arm. So this is the front. And then the right side would be the arm that's extended. So right here, the right. The back side of your arm, which is the underneath here. The left side which is going to be the other side on this arm, or this side on the other arm. And the other arm is going to be basically the mirror version of it. So this is the left arm right here. It says here down in this gray font, this is left. So the left arm right here, you have the front, left, back, and then the other side is going to be the right side. So, this is also the hands, basically, just this part right here. And then, now we're going to make a new layer, which is this little plus button down here, add new layer. And you're going to want to use your paintbrush tool. I'm doing this with my mouse just to show that you can do this with your mouse. It is going to be easier if you have a drawing tablet, which I do, but like I said, I'm doing this so you guys can see that you can do this with the mouse. And I've always done it with the mouse, so at any rate, you want to grab the paintbrush from your toolbox, and if for some reason none of these are showing up, at the top right here, you can toggle your history, your toolbox, and your layers and your color wheel. I don't like to have my history up there, it's really distracting, so anyway. You want to have anti-aliasing disabled, which I already do. It's going to look like a bit of a staircase when you click it. By default is going to be enabled, so it's going to have this like blurry line, and the reason why you don't want that is because the clothing, whenever you upload it to Roblox, it gets condensed, so the detail becomes blurred. So if you already have something blurred and you bring it to Roblox, it's going to become more blurry and it's just going to lose its detail. So if you do anti-aliasing disabled and have this nice clean hard line, you have these strong details. So like if I take this line and I select this line, for example, and I shrink it down, it's gonna get blurry. And that's exactly what happens to Roblox. So you want it to be nice, crisp detail. And I'll even pull up a shirt that I've already made before. Okay, so this is an old one. My shading has improved some since I've made this, because I made this years ago. But, as you can see, the details are crisp, they're clear. But if I go to this exact t-shirt on Roblox, so here we go. This is the same t-shirt as this right here. And I'll even put this side by side. As you can see here, let's move this out of the way for now. The lines are blurred compared to this. This is crisp, clean. This here is blurred out. And if I had done the other way, this would be even more blurrier than this is right now. And if you're looking for something really soft, then like go for it. If it's not something like super detailed, like say you're making a plain t-shirt, then that's fine. But if you were making something detailed and you want crisp, clean lines, you're going to want to do this. Because this is the outcome of doing so. And you know, you can tell the difference between the two, that detail gets lost. So, with that being said, let's get into it now. Alright, so what I like to do is I like to select the, well, you have to go to your background layer with the template. And what I like to do is actually I select the arm, because the arm is a half of the width of the torso and the same height. So what I do is I select this, copy, paste, And then I drag this over the selection over. There we go. We drag this selection over and we line this up to the corner just like that. And I like to just make a little mark with my pencil here to show that that is the midpoint. And then just Control D to deselect. So now we have our midpoint selected so that we know whenever, so that way we can just do one side and mirror it if we're doing something symmetrical, or just the things that are symmetrical we can mirror it, like the collar, for example. That way it's not like all off-putting. So, what I like to do is I like to do, when I make my colors, I like to do so with the colors, and well, anything that is like a seam, I like to do a 2 pixel thickness and a 1 pixel thickness. So, what I mean by that is I'll draw a color basically, and whatever color shape you want's up to you, but like I'll make a color and then I'll go and make it 1 pixel, and I'll take my pencil, or I could just do my pencil, I guess. And I just do a 1 pixel line to give it a bit of a sewing seam effect. Or like if you look at your like t-shirt collar in real life, it'll have like 2 stitches. Typically they have 2 stitches and they're even sized. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But I like the look of having a 2 pixel and a 1 pixel. But the preference is up to you. I don't like this color. I'm gonna redo this color real quick. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. So the color is going to be dependent on what you're making. In this, I think I'm just gonna do a simple t-shirt with some like maybe some plaid or something or some kind of detail. Because this is just for beginners, just to get you started. I'll do a more detailed clothing video in the future. But so for a basic t-shirt, this should be good. And depending on how you want your pants, if you want them to be taller, you may want to like draw, or if you want a belt, you're gonna want to draw the belt. And since this is gonna be a t-shirt and jeans, I'm gonna go ahead and draw a simple belt. And a belt's pretty straightforward. If you hit shift, it'll straighten your line out. It'll rotate at specific degrees, and you can just draw the lines for the belt. But you don't want it to be like right up against the bottom, because some of it will get folded under, and also you need room for the buckle too. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to select this half and then Control C and then Control V. You can see the controls at the bottom left here. And then we're gonna grab this left dot here and we're gonna drag it all the way to the right of this torso so that it hugs. And so this is kind of looking like a Santa Claus belt, and I'm not liking it too much, so I'm going to like adjust this, make this buckle a little bit wider. And the other thing you would want for jeans is you're going to want like the little loops that hold the belt into place. So you can either just draw them straight onto here, but it's kind of hard to see what you're doing. So I'm going to just draw them here. And you just kind of want to draw like, just kind of think of it as pixel art, honestly. Just make it look like a belt loop. Like that should be, that's pretty good. It's kind of like a pixelized, like, cell phone, or not really a cell phone, but phone icon or something. And we're just gonna put, like, 2 of them on each side. Well, I'm just gonna put on one side here. We're just gonna clear out this section here. And then just copy this. And to do multiple selections, just hold down Control. That's pretty good. And I'm gonna set actually. Now we're going to go ahead and select half of this. And then we're going to flip it over again. And you know you've done it correctly if it's nice and crisp on the other side. If it's blurry, then you either says it too far to the right or too far to the left, and it's just not centered. So I'm just going to put a little metal barb here for like the little pen that holds the pants. And that's basically the t-shirt part, like this torso right there that's done, at least in terms of line work. So now we're just gonna erase this little line because we don't want that in our final product. And this is going to be a short sleeve t-shirt. So I'm gonna just basically draw some sleeve cuffs. And you could either make them straight, which to me always looks a bit off, or you can make them at kind of a bit of a diagonal. And it kind of gives it look more wrapped around of a look. Which it's up to you which you prefer to do, though, obviously. And so just keep in mind this is the front side, this is the right, this is the back. So this is gonna be the front of your arm, and then the back right side. So that's gonna be the side, and then this is gonna show up on the back. So you want this to be the mirror image of this, basically. So you just select this. Well, actually, first let me put the second seam on here first before I do this. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and select this. So you don't have to select all the way down here, unless you have a long sleeve shirt. So we're gonna select this, and basically we're just gonna do a similar thing to the torso. We're gonna drag this all the way to the left, and then drag this dot over to here. That way it lines up. And you're gonna do the same thing with the right. So the right should be the same thing as well, so that all lines up in the end here. But the thing is it's you'll notice it's off. Well, you can do one or two things. You can either take this and get like the front here, this front section, copy it, and bring it over here. And then make sure it's lined up with the top there. And make sure that this lines up with both this and this in the complete process. So basically, that's all you really need to do, is to smooth this line up with this one at least. I'm not quite sure if this is how I'm going to keep mine, but for now I'm going to leave it like that. I'm also going to draw some gloves. So here we got the draw a line, then we just draw a little line here, arch it for the thumb. And then for simple gloves, you just draw a line here, but this needs to be further out, actually. Alright, then we're going to draw this line down. This is going to be your fingers, and then size this down. Draw the single pixel line. And this part right here is a little too far up, so I'm just gonna put this down. Bam. D. And it's basically the same thing with this. You just select this, and you copy it, paste it, drag it over, and it's gonna be the mirror of the front side to the back. And the rest here is just gonna be straight lines. Most of your detail is going to come in your shading. So it is important that you shade properly. So this is gonna be the front side, like I said before. So this is gonna be your thumb. This is your fingers sticking out. This is the other side of your hand. So they're basically, tactical gloves where your fingers come out. And on the inside part, you're going to want to bring this up to a more shallow glove. And the reason for that is because this is the the inside part of your arm of your Roblox character. So like, if you could see the other side of this, so this is the right side. So imagine the left side here. That is going to be this right here. And once this is wrapped together, you're gonna see a basically, if you were to extend this all the way down, this is gonna be cut. You're gonna see a part like of the glove right here, basically, and it's gonna look a little weird. So I recommend doing that. You can mess around with it, but then again, you have to be careful what you do, because Roblox decided to charge you for every shirt, pant, upload 10 Robux each. And the reason for that is because people, they decided, oh, well, we're just gonna copy people's work and then just spam upload it. Therefore, making hundreds of thousands of the same shirt, same pants, and it just got out of control. So they did that. Alright, so now we've got our right arm, and it looks pretty stiff. It looks a bit weird, and you can make yours look more realistic, make it round or something, but I'm just keeping it simple because of time, mostly. And we're just going to, actually, we're just going to grab this corner, drag down, and select this whole rectangle here. And we didn't draw anything on the shoulder, so we're not going to worry about that. And we're going to select the hand here too. And we're going to Control C, Control V, and then mirror this all the way over to here. And then that should be your left arm. And that's your arm's done. And now we need the collar, the finisher collar to on her neck. So, I tend to see people just draw straight lines and then extend it to the back. That looks really weird. Please don't do that. To make it more realistic, the best thing to do, I find, is just start with like a straight line here, and then draw this out, or grab the dots, draw it out, and just kind of like make it a ring, so it's gonna look like a hole around your neck, and just extend it, make sure it's lined up with the bottom of the color here. And once you're happy with the shape, it looks like a collar to you, just go ahead and finish adding your detail. Okay, I have my neck finished. And the thing is, when it comes to Roblox clothing, simple can look really plain. So, you know, when you do simple designs, it really heavily relies on your shading technique and your ability to shade wrinkles. Because if you don't have those wrinkles, it's just gonna look very plain. And if you just want like solid color with just some line work, that's up to you if that's what you're going for. But if you're wanting something semi-realistic, it's gonna look really off unless you do a lot of good shading. And so now that we have the line work, we're gonna go ahead and start shading. What I like to do is I like to duplicate the line work layer so that, you know, if I were to mess up on my shading or like up a line, or I can extend past a line or whatever, I have a backup layer. So I'm gonna make a duplicate, as I said, and if you need to, just name the layers. I'm gonna name this one backup. This is gonna be shading or something like that. And you can put the backup on top so that if you color, the line's gonna still, like if you go color under the line, the line will be on top, basically. And I also like to duplicate the template layer and I put it under the shading, and I merge these two down so that when I use my wand tool, it selects all of this, like that, instead of basically bleeding out into the open, which I don't want. So, that's what I typically do. And, if you hit shift and you click the, checkers, the transparent areas, it selects all of the same color, basically. And, I'm gonna go ahead and pick a color. I think I'm gonna go ahead and go with I'm gonna go ahead and do a gray t-shirt. So we're gonna pick a gray. And I'm gonna color all the areas. Actually, I forgot one thing. Before we do that, because I forgot about this. I knew something was missing. So this belt. If you did a belt, you want to watch this part. If you didn't do a belt, skip it. But we need to extend the belt to the sides and the back, otherwise it's just gonna look really weird. So what I do is I select all the belt on the torso here. I bring it to the back. And then I erase the buckle. And then we're just going to extend these, draw these lines, fill in these lines basically. So they're filled in. And now the next thing is to draw the center belt loop. So I just do a rectangle personally because the center one's gonna be straight typically. There we go. Actually I made this up there. And we have our center belt loop. And then I'm going to select one side of the right side of this. And oops, not delete it, copy it. I'm gonna bring it over here. And I'm going to select this portion here and bring it over. And then fill in the line. And obviously, feel free to move the belt buckles if you're not happy with the placement. I'm fine with this. This looks fine. So I'm going to copy this, mirror it to the other side. And there. Bam. And I'm actually... Normally I would draw like some stitches, but they're so small that I can't really do that. So, at any rate, we're going to duplicate this. And the shading. Duplicate the background. Just down. Okay. Now we have everything. And we're going to go ahead and color the parts that we want to have of the color basically that we want. So I'm just selecting all the areas that that I want to be of this color, which I'm making the t-shirt gray, so I'm going to select all the t-shirt sections that are transparent. Okay. So we selected all those areas, and then I'm going to pick my color, and then grab the pink bucket, shift, and then click. And that fills all that area. And of the color that you pick, I would pick like the second darkest shade that you want, or the darkest. That's what because I feel like personally to me that's more easier. At least the second to darkest is more easier. So I want mine to be to have like about this as the second darkest shade. We're going to have like multiple layers of shading to give it more of that depth and realism to it. And I'm also going to go ahead and select the areas that are going to be the jeans. And actually, I'm going to go ahead, since these are going to be jeans, I'm going to just go ahead and draw actually, no, I'm not going to worry about that because it's not going to be that high. So I'm going to pick a blue jean type color. So I feel like this would be a pretty good one. At least on my monitor. I do have nightlight on, so it might be a little bit off, but yeah. That should be a good blue jean color. And then I'm going to personally make my belt a brown leather belt. So I'm gonna select all the, oh, I forgot the belt loops. So first I gotta color the belt loops. And granted, yeah, you can click and fill this way too if you prefer. I just do it this way to make sure that stuff isn't like spilled over to something else. And if I miss color, I can easily change it. So, let me grab a leather, a brown leather type color. Alright, so now the belt loop, I'm gonna do, since the t-shirt's gray, I guess I'm gonna go ahead and go with like a gold color. Didn't want that to be gold here. There we go. And then the gloves, they're gonna be black, but I'm not gonna color them black. I'm going to color them a dark gray, basically. Because you don't want them straight black, otherwise you're not gonna see the line detail. Alright, this is everything colored in. Now we have now that we have everything colored in, we're going to go ahead and shade in. So you'll notice if you have a dark color, it starts selecting the black. So what we do is we turn the tolerance down until it selects the color you want, like that. And we don't need to shade the seams. The seams can stay a solid color. The only time you need to change the color is if, like, it's in an area that you need the darkest shade to be. So, what I typically do when I shade is I go back and forth between selecting the colored layer and on the blank layer. So, this is going to be the shading layer. And basically, we take the color picker tool right here, and you can hit K as well. And I like to do like a brush with the 3. And you have to select the color on the color layer too, otherwise it's not going to work. And actually, I'm going to start with the 4. Yeah, start with the 4. And you don't want to make this symmetrical because you want it to look like a wrinkly t-shirt basically. So, or like a person wearing a t-shirt, you know, like they're gonna have crinkles in the shirt. That's what we're drawing. So, you take the original color and we're going to darken it. And I typically darken by, like, for the darkest color, I make it a drastically different color because that's going to be the darkest part of the shirt. It's going to be the darkest shadows. And so I would say, you know, like maybe lowering the value by 6. So this was originally a 20 value. I turned it down to 14. And we have this. So now we're going to like kind of rough in a shadow. Just imagine, you can either look at your own t-shirt or just imagine it in your head or look up Google Images and like think of how a wrinkle is. And the deepest parts are going to be the parts that are darkest. So I personally like to outline it with a shadow. It just makes it look more clean in terms of Roblox clothing. I know that part isn't typically really realistic, but it just looks better that way. So I just typically start with going around the outside edges. And, you know, you don't want to go too crazy with the size of it because you're doing multiple layers. And we don't want it to be uniform either. If we make it uniform, it's just going to look very flat, usually. So, when we do the wrinkles, we kind of just do like a swoop and then come back. But we want the tip to be the narrowest point. And we're gonna bring this back down. And I probably made this actually a little too thick because you don't want it too super thick. We're gonna swoop it into whatever shape you want it to be. And since this is a very plain t-shirt, I'm taking up quite a bit of space with the wrinkles. And you kind of just want to make it a bit random. And you could even throw in some, like, randomly, like that in the middle, if that's what you want to do. Obviously you can go back through and change anything that you don't like. So just in the beginning, be rough with it and then refine it as you go. Honestly, that's what I do. Just be rough with it and then refine it as you go. And, it's gonna look ugly at first. That's how all art starts. Anything that's art related starts out ugly. So don't be too upset if it looks a bit ugly to you. At first. And since this is it's a jeans with a belt, I'm also gonna make it kind of look like the t-shirt's tucked in because the belt's showing. You can also have like these wrinkles branch off into another wrinkle. Shirts sometimes do that. And you can even have a wrinkle like extend under another wrinkle. Um, just play around with it until you're happy with how like it looks. And another thing you can also do is like if you want these to be a little bit, not so blocky, just like decrease the brush size as you get like towards the end of your wrinkle, just to give it a more, I don't know, proper ending, I guess. I guess you could say, I don't know. But yeah. Just gonna finish this off. And that looks pretty good, I think. At least for now. And obviously it's probably not gonna, the wrinkles are probably gonna be a little bit changed up as I go, which is perfectly fine. But you could either go ahead and do the darkest shading all around and then go to the next shade, but or you can basically layer it. For the sake of this video and not being boring, I'm too boring. I'm just going to continue shading this section and then I'll shade through everything else. so that you guys have the idea of, you know, the basic shading. So this is going to be our darkest layer, and actually I'm going to change this to darkest, and then I'm going to make a new layer. We still have this selected, so we have this new layer, and we're going to go to our color layer and grab our dropper, where if you remember the value, you can just enter the value or the ID or whatever. And I'm going to brighten this up. So I usually go by like 4 or 5. I find is a pretty good one. I'm gonna go with 4. So I don't want it too bright. And we're just going to like trace around our wrinkles. And if there's like some areas you want to touch up first, you could always just go to our darkest layer and take the original base layer and just come through and like just sweep through and clean these up a bit too. If you feel like some areas are too thick or something. Yeah, if they're too thick, my bad. If you feel like an area is too thick, just come through, clean them up a little bit. Which, it tends to happen, I mean, that's no big deal. So, we're going to take our little bit lighter color, and if you want a more subtle transition, you could do, I typically do about 4 to 5 layers of shades, but if you want an even more transition, you're going to want to use a smaller brush first of all, and also it's only more doable if you have big spaces like this. But you'd also do just like more subtle color differences. So I'm just gonna go with 24. I think that'll be fine. And we're just going to try and like just follow along with the dark shading, but we don't want to over we don't want to go up against it because we are doing the third lightest shade basically. And it doesn't need to be perfect. That's the thing. If we make shading perfect, it's going to look weird. That is what I've noticed. You don't want to be perfect. You want to be kind of sloppy with it, actually. And that'll give it a little bit more detail. Because, I mean, in reality, nothing's perfect. So, we're not going to worry about it being perfect distance from everything or anything like that. And, you know, while you're shading and you want to get an idea of what the shirt looks like once it's uploaded, or how your shading looks, just zoom out to 100% and you'll see what it looks like from the distance. And you can obviously just adjust it accordingly. Because at first, like I said, it's going to look a bit ugly. And it's going to happen, so don't get too upset with it until later on, and of course you can always adjust accordingly. So just keep that in mind when you're making clothing. And that's also why you keep things on separate layers so that you can easily just come back and adjust whatever that needs to be adjusted. And you can also, to add another bit of like depth to it, you could do more shallower wrinkles. So basically, let me fill in this area a little bit. And then we take our eraser and we can like bring down the size a bit. And then like make a smaller wrinkle in there. And shade around that, basically. So that it is a more shallow wrinkle if you want more detail. Also, another thing I'd like to mention is everybody has their own like shading style in the clothing industry. So, this is just my own, and um, a way to like pick up different shadings is what I would recommend is just looking at other people's shading. So basically, I'd go to like DeviantArt, for example, and you can look up Roblox clothing or Roblox uniforms or something, and you can look around and find things that uh catch your eye, something that you like the detail on, like something like this, for example. You know, it has a lot of detail, and you can just zoom into this, and you can look at the detail at the shading, and you can learn the shading, or you can copy this, and you can bring it to Paint.net and look at it. But don't copy their work; just look at it. Just observe it. Just observe it, learn from it, and something like this too. This is really cool. You can just bring this in, create a new layer, and you can zoom in and see like they've been shaded with antilizing off as well. And you can see all of the, layers of shading and how they shaded all of this stuff. And this is how I personally self-taught myself how to make clothing, is by just looking at all of these clothings that are on like DeviantArt and such, and just look at all the shading on all of the other people's clothing to learn from it and to develop my own style. There's also some that are more smoother and some with less wrinkles and some with more. It's whatever you prefer you want your um clothing to be. So that's just something I felt was noteworthy. See, this right here is a really good shading for like a t-shirt and like a jacket. Some more pretty good shading. So yeah, you can learn a lot just by looking at clothing such as that, and uh you know create your own like shading style, and that allows you to just become like an independent creator at that point, if that makes sense. And um it takes practice. I'm not gonna say, right off the bat my clothing looked great. It definitely did not. I could show you some of my first stuff. Right here, this is one of the first shirts I ever made, and I used a clothing template, shading template. This isn't even my shading, this is just a shading template. Yeah, this is just a shading template I used, and the details are just really weird. And this is also another one of my first shirts. The shading's again really weird. I use a shading template, but also some of it isn't. Uh, but yeah, these are my first shirts, and this is one of my first shirts, but I learned a little bit more. These were. This is probably. Yeah. The details were there, but the shading's just not there on these. And that was the main issue. Like, this has nice line work, I'd say, but the shading was just bad. So it doesn't look very good. So that's the important thing is shading. If you want something to look good. And another thing is when you make these like little shadow wrinkles, I personally like to just like draw just a little bit in of the dark color into the wrinkle just a little bit, but not entirely because I don't know why, but it feels a little bit weird otherwise. That's just my personal preference though. So up to you what you do on that, obviously. Then we're just gonna zoom out. We're gonna see what that looks like. And if we're happy with it, you can continue. But I'm gonna just clean this up a little bit here because it's kind of a little chaotic. There we go. Now we're going to create a new layer. And we're going to brighten this up even more. So this last one was like 24. So this should be like 28 for me. We're just going to do the same thing basically, but inside it, bit like as last time, but it's going to be a bit smaller. And you can also obviously vary the distance in between the uh, the shadows, basically. If you don't want them to be all the same, play with the shadow thickness and, you know, the layers of shadows and all that, and how you shade them. You can make very smooth shadows, you can make them really pointy, crinkled ones like I'm doing. Just play around with it until you find something that you're happy with. Because ultimately, you're the one that's designing this, so. Okay, so that's the next layer done. And at this point, you can either decide to start doing highlights or do another layer. Since I have a lot of space, so I'm going to do one more layer, then do highlights. So I'm going to speed through this layer, and then I'll show you guys the highlights. Okay, that layer is done. And, this layer is done, I mean. We're going to do the highlights, so we're going to make another layer. And this time we're going to go by like 6 difference. Maybe even 8. We want it to be significantly brighter. And some people, they kind of just do like something like that. You know, they just do like the top edge or something. And what I like to do is I think about what part of the shirt's gonna hit the light the most, and that's where I highlight them with the brightest color, and um I make it make it small compared to the rest. Like it's got the biggest gap between than the rest. So like here, you back it up and you see it, yeah. And I might do double layers of highlights. I'm going to. I'm going to do double layers of highlights. So this one's going to take up more space. And then I'm going to do one that takes even less space. You'll see what I mean here in a moment. I did that. And now I'm going to do another one. Basically same process. But even smaller. Because this is the absolute highlights. And then that's the final highlight. And you know, if the shadows look too deep, too crisp, just go through and make the lighter layers thicker than the darker layers, and that'll make it less darker, like deeper looking. Um, I'm just gonna leave it as is for the sake of time, but you get the idea. And another thing I'd like to show you guys is uh I guess pattern types. So I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to just call this pattern. I'm going to go down to the original like solid color layer, select that, go back to the pattern layer, and I'll have like the plugins down in the description, but if your computer isn't very good, it might take a while for paint.net to load up, and in some cases, if it's like a really old computer, it's probably going to crash. So you could do things like you could like render a hexagon, an anti-analyzing on, and like let's say you want to make it look like a techie mesh or something. Turn this down to like 4. Hit enter, and then you can change the line width to 1, and then you can change the transparency of it, and that gives it like a like a little kind of like a mesh texture, I guess. Maybe make the hexagons a little smaller. And gives it, you know, that like texture, it kind of looks like a mesh shirt. Um, or you could do another one I like to do is where is it? Random Maze 2. Like I said, I'll try to have these plugins down in the description below. But this one you're going to want to select the color. I'm going to do black and then do that. And then brush with 1, and you want these to be equal, so I'm going to do that to 4. Now down to 4. And anti-analyzing on gives you the maze. And then double click the layer they had the pattern on. And you can change the opacity. And until like you're happy with it. And then you have that pattern. And if we zoom out, it gives you a different type of texture. Another thing you could do is like let's say you want to do a colored stripe, but you want to keep the like layers, the colorways or something. So let's say I want just a big fat red stripe down my shirt, down like the right side or something. So I'll just take a rectangle, not a rounded, a regular rectangle. We click this shape draw fill mode until it gives us this solid circle and square. And we're going to fill it. First we need to grab a reg, and we're going to, fill this in. And I think I'm going to do another line. Like that. And then we're going to bring down the opacity until we're happy with it. Or you can play around with the blend mode, so I could do like overlay. And that looks more like you shaded it in there. You could also do multiply, which I like that right there. That looks pretty good. Just play around with the blend mode too. And to get what you have, I'm gonna do multiply, and that gives you that color stripe. Or we could do we had this layer. Another thing you could do is if you want like the horizontal or vertical stripes, actually, we go ahead and we select this, then render, grid checkerboard, I believe. Well, this is gonna give you like a grid pattern, which that can look pretty good too, and you can, do the same thing as the other things, like overlay or something. Well, it's not gonna work too well with black, but yeah. I probably should have made the grids smaller, but you get the idea. But so let's say you want a striped shirt. So you would do render, and then you do grid lines. And if you want horizontal lines, you move this all the way to the left. And then you can change the vertical spacing to whatever you please. Or you can take the vertical spacing all the way down and change the horizontal spacing to give you vertical stripes. And then you click OK, and this can give you another texture too, as well. Let's bring down the opacity, and it gives you like another texture. So yeah, that's another thing. If you don't want it to be smooth, that's another thing you can do. Now let's say you want a gradient to like gray to blue. Or actually, like, I guess, a cyan to blue or something. We can just use a gradient tool, make a gradient, and then overlay, and then you have your gradient. So I actually like this gradient. So I think I'm gonna keep that, but the thing to keep in mind is with the gradient is to select all of the color and do the gradient. Well, the thing is it's tricky because when you do something like this, you want your sleeves to line up. So the best way to honestly do this would be to take this, copy it, go to new. I'm gonna put it at I'm gonna go ahead and just put it at 1200 and then leave the height. And we'll copy this and then we're going to bring the sleeve section basically up. So we're going to go ahead and select all the arms basically. Now we got our arms selected, we're going to bring this up. Leave just a little bit of a gap at least. And then we're going to select all of this. Okay, so we create a new layer and we're going to make our gradient to like whatever we're happy with. And we're going to copy. Actually, don't copy all of it. We're going to select the each section basically because we have to line them back up. So on our layer, we're going to basically, we're on our new layer, and it needs to be on top of everything. So if we have this zoomed out and we copy it, most of it's going to copy it into the place it should, at least on this part here. Not the arms, though. The arms will have to reposition. There we go, we have our gradient brought over, and then we're just going to double click our layer, and you can do either overlay or multiply, whichever you like better. I like the overlay better. And, if you think it's too dark, just go to levels and you can like adjust the brightness, or if you're not happy with the hue or the saturation, go to hue, saturation, and you can change the gradient colors, saturation, or you could even go to your shading layers and change the lightness of them. So you have a lot of flexibility here with like all of the stuff that you do, like in all the colors. So like if you don't like your original color scheme or whatever, you can easily just go back and change it, as long as you it's just as long as you put everything on separate layers, it makes things a lot easier to change the colors of everything. So just keep that in mind. I think I'm gonna go with that. Instead of just a boring gray color. And I'm gonna also add a texture because this is a plain t-shirt. So I'm going I'm gonna try random maze. Whoops. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is show you guys how to do the shading on the belt buckle. So basically metallic shading. You could do a couple things with metallic shading, honestly. I'm gonna do a new layer just to keep it separate. And you have to like select the belt buckle, and you can choose the darkest and the lightest color you want. Use the gradient tool. Set the gradient to linear, where it has like the two dark lines there, and you just drag the gradient. Like you click it and drag it, and you can do that. But if you want a little more control over your gradient, you could also just start with like that color, and then you could take your paintbrush and then just kind of like shade from darkest to lightest, basically. So like I could grab the dark gold, just go straight down, or if I kind of want more of a, like, I don't know, a radial, I could just like add a little more dimension to it, brighten up the color a little, maybe a bit more, and then increase brush size, brighten up the color even more. And then brighten it even more for like a highlight type color. And then I'm gonna brighten it even more. And then just add like a highlight. Though you kind of have to, like, if you do this way, you kind of have to play with it, because it can kind of be tricky to do a gradient of your own if you're like doing a certain shape. You kind of just have to play with the differentiation of shade values as well. I believe you kind of have to make it a little bit. You have to like do more layers, and I think you have to like make them more drastic. So like, I'm gonna erase this actually and try this a different way. So, say I start with my darkest color. I'm just gonna do my pencil here. I could do that, and then I could maybe, let me try increasing it by like 10. And then putting a little bit more here. And increase it by 10 again. Another 10. And it pretty much looks the same. Just not as like fluent, but if you're gonna do like something like the belt buckle, it's just, it doesn't matter what you do there. If you are like shading armor, you're definitely going to want to shade it in this method where you do like, you know, the layers and make your own type of gradient, because it's going to be, you know, the lighting is going to be different. You're not just going to have like a straight, you know, lighting or radial gradient. It's just going to look not right, if that makes sense. So when you're doing armor, I would highly recommend just doing your own gradient, just like this. And you can, when you do it this way, you have a little more flexibility over like the layers, basically. So if you were to like mess up, you could easily just go back through and fix it because you have these hard lines, whereas if I were to do a gradient, it's got all these different layers, so it's a little bit harder to fix, if that makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and do the jeans. The jeans are going to be a little bit different. They're going to have the wrinkles just like, you know, anything else really, but they're going to have texture. And that we'll get to, but first let me just do the shading. The only difference that we're going to do here, well, so actually here's the thing. Since we have part of the pants on the torso, we're not going to like, let me grab the color. So we're not going to like, let me darken this. Okay. So you don't want to just like, you know, outline this, you know, because that's gonna look weird if you do it like that. So what I would suggest is when it comes to like the legs here, is I would just imagine, or if it helps you, you could just like make another layer. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of layers at the end of this, but honestly, having a lot of layers is important. But what you could do to help you, like just, you know, mentally imagine this, I guess, a bit better, for lack of a better term, we just select an arm, because the arms are the same length as legs, basically. So we're going to like drag this box up, and remember to put this on a completely different layer. And we're going to fill this box. And we're going to fill it with the original color. And bring this actually to like the top, so that sits above everything. Like that. That way you have a leg here. Right? So we have this leg. I didn't put the right color. And that's going to be the pants continued. So what you could do to make this easier for you is we select the original, you know, coloring layer, and we're going to select this. Well, actually, before we do that, I'm sorry. I'm jumping around quite a bit. We're going to copy this leg over. That way, you know, it looks like the bottom half, but it's not really the bottom half. And we're going to go back to the original layer and select the pants, and we're going to select the legs as well. Whoops. There we go. That way we have this whole selection. We're just going to pretend that this is the whole leg, if that makes sense. So we're going to do the darken color, you know, like typical, and just treat it as it's the rest of the leg. That way it's a little bit easier for your brain to like process that, you know, you're making legs and you're not trying to just guess, if that makes sense. You're not trying to just guess where the legs are going to line up. If you do this, you know that the legs are going to line up like this in the final product. I mean, it's going to be slightly a little bit odd sometimes, because, you know, Roblox is weird that way. But this way, it's a little bit easier. You have a continuous, like, you know, shading going. And you can do this with other things, like if you're doing armor or something, just like, and you need like to continue on something to a different thing, just do the same thing with the other body parts, because arms, sides, legs, they're all the same size, height and width-wise. The top and bottom of the torso, they are, those are, I guess you could say, the side horizontal, or the arm horizontal. It's still the same, it's just horizontal, if that makes sense. And then the torso and the back, you just take an arm and you double it. And it's the same size. Same with the leg. So, if you keep that in mind, and if you need to like extend something over, just remember that. And that'll help you quite a bit on its own, just knowing that. But anyways, we're gonna shade the legs. And one thing I forgot is that you want the try to go in the middle of the legs. I guess you could just mirror it too, but I'm just gonna do that by selecting an arm, copying it, going to an empty layer yet again. Just gonna bring this over. And then we're just gonna pencil in a black line just like before with the torso. That way we have our half point. We're going back to our normal layer, deselect. Or you can keep it selected, I guess, actually. It's best to select it so that you're not spilling over. But, there we have it selected again. Again, apologies for bouncing around, but, yeah. We're just gonna go ahead and shade this. So, for the middle, what I would recommend is using your line tool so that you can have a easy straight line. And, if it helps, you could also draw your shoes in advance on here. So, that's what I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna go ahead and draw my shoes. That way, I have them. So, basically, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and basically, essentially, create my pants right here, the front side, and then I can just transfer the front side to the pants template, if that makes sense. So, we're going to go ahead and, like, just draw the shoes. I'm just going to draw some, like, tennis shoes, basically. Some people, when they draw shoes, they just kind of do, like, you know, the front here. They just do, like, a little arc. You can do that. But I like to draw the sides, personally, so I'm going to go ahead and draw the sides with my shoes. Just, like... that, basically. And then I'm going to, draw the seams. And you can make the shoes taller and you can like draw the lip and like the shoestrings and all, but I'm going to leave it like this personally for now. And I'm also going to draw the, if you look at a pair of shoes, there's that little rubber like trapezoid in the front of your shoes. I'm just going to go ahead and put that there. This is going to be the rubber part here. So, there's that. And, I mean, you can also, if you wanted to, you could also, like, do, like, a rubber around the bottom, too. Like that. Actually, I think I'm going to keep this at a 1. I think that will look better. Just like that. So that's the rubber. And, you know, design the shoes the way you want. Whatever. Just look at a shoe and then just, like, make it 2D, if that makes sense. But I'm going to go ahead and go with this shoe. And, we're going to go back to our shading layer. Grab our darkest color that we had. Unless you didn't do that, just make a dark color. And then we're going to do similar to the t-shirt, and we're going to shade in wrinkles. But you want to make them look more pant-like. Or if you like doing dress pants, maybe you don't do like wrinkles, but it kind of looks a bit strange if you do that. If you just make them really flat. But again, it's whatever you're going for, whatever look you're going for. And, I also want pockets. I'm sorry for jumping around yet. Sorry, but I'm gonna go ahead and draw the pocket. Pockets are pretty simple. Yeah, pockets, they don't go to the top, and they just kind of sit there in a way. Well, some of them do. Some of them do go all the way up here, I guess. Some of them don't. I'll go ahead and just extend mine like that, I guess. Um, it's kind of a big pocket, but it's okay. And most jeans, they have zippers, so we're going to go ahead and draw a zipper area, which isn't too difficult. And, just draw a line here. We're not going to mirror the line work other than the shoes and the, pocket. So basically, we just wouldn't copy this. And then, can, just do the line work here, like the seam. If you want, I'm going to go ahead and go with the seam. Actually, this needs to move over a bit. There we go. So that's the zipper. I'll flip over my line work later, but in my shading. But I just have the two legs here so that I can shade the under the belt basically. Um, so now that we actually have everything, because I keep forgetting, I'm sorry. We're going to erase this wrinkle actually, and we're going to add the depth to the pocket there too, because I mean, it's a lip of fabric. And just going to like draw in some wrinkles, how, because typically when you're standing, there's going to be wrinkles in your pants. And they're usually kind of like face downward too. And you kind of just have to play with it till you're happy. And if your pants are tucked in to your shoes, make sure to draw those wrinkles too. Just give those wrinkles. And, the more detailed, the better they look, to be honest. But you don't want to go too overly detailed either. So you have to, like, kind of balance the amount of detail you do. I think these wrinkles are going to be too thick, actually, so I'm going to do those. Okay, and so I got some of the wrinkles here, and I can just, beef up some of the sections, and we don't want it to be perfectly straight either, because it can look a bit weird, but it's just a matter of preference too. And sometimes there's like, kind of like wrinkles like around the thigh area, so you can add those too if you want. And yeah, just play around with the wrinkles. You can look at pictures of pants too to see how um people's pants wrinkle. That sounds a bit strange, but you know what I mean. And at this point, we're just basically doing the same thing as we did with the torso. We're just going to create different layers of shading and, making each layer lighter and all that. So I'm just going to fast forward through this part since we're just repeating the same steps. Alright, so we have our leg here. I did several layers of shading because there was such a big, area of emptiness and I didn't like it. So, um, personal preference. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna select our darkest color of our shading and set the secondary color opacity always 0. And if you don't have the more colors, I should have mentioned this like way sooner, but click the more button. And then we're gonna go to effects and render. We can do this part by hand, but it would take a long time. So, by default, this is what you're gonna get. Oh wait, no, it's gonna look like this by default. And if you want like a grid pattern on your jeans, because I've seen, well, they're not jeans, but I've seen pants with a grid pattern before. They're more like water repellent type pants. But anyway, we're gonna go to checker. Just bring it all the way down to 1. It gives you this checker pattern. And then we're going to you can either overlay, additive, multiply, and I think I'm gonna go additive. And then I'm going to bring the opacity down. So it gives you that kind of like that that jean texture, if you know what I mean. And just kind of like play with it until you're happy with it, of course. But you can just like adjust the opacity to whatever you think looks best to you. And then in the area of the shoe, we're just gonna go ahead and just erase the pattern because we don't want the pattern where our shoe is. Next, we gotta shade our shoe. So go to your line work for your shoe. And you may need to like just do a select box if you don't have like a painted layer, and just like select the areas that like mine just spills out with the rubber area. And I'm personally going to make my rubber like a really dark gray. You could do like brown or whatever, it's up to you. I'm gonna do mine like I don't know, a 10, so it's like almost black but not really. I down the wrong thing. There we go. Actually, I'm gonna make that a 6. There we go. And then we're gonna color our shoe. So select the areas with the shoe. There we go. And then just gonna pick a color for our shoe. I think I'm just gonna make my shoes brown because I kind of just want to do something that matches, but I don't want it to like be bright either, if that makes sense. So I'm just gonna make mine brown. And then these, obviously, you're not gonna add wrinkles or shoes. With shoes, I usually start with the darkest color. It's whichever is more comfortable. And then I go up by, I think I did 8 there. And then just like color it in. You can leave just like a smidge of like shadow here around the rubber if you want, but don't make it too big because there is a lot of light shining, because we're thinking of this at the perspective of the light shining straight at you. And if you don't want to do that, don't have to, obviously. You can play with the lighting too. So we don't want the shadow to be like too intense on the rubber there. Just a tiny bit. And then most of this we're going to just do with the pencil because it's such a small area. We're not going to do a whole lot of layers either. And it's just kind of the same process, really. Like, it's like the same process as like everything else, just layer it, go lighter each time. Oops, let me grab that lighter color. I'm gonna go up like, I don't know, 6, I guess. And, you know, it helps to kind of do more of a radial gradient around the, like, the front part of the shoe if you can, but it's kind of difficult because everything's so blocky. And, just gonna go up one more. Oh, I went the wrong way, whoops. And then just kind of do, like, a highlight. Um, you know, you could also just, like, do majority highlight too if you wanted. It just kind of, yeah, play with it. And you can also add texture to your shoes if you want them to have textures. If you want them to be smooth, just leave them like that. And I'm gonna leave mine smooth. And honestly, there isn't a whole lot you can really do with the rubber. You can just do like just a tad bit of a highlight here on the rubber, but that's all you can really do. It's just a tiny bit of a highlight, which doesn't really make a whole lot of a difference. So, and then we have our leg. Some people they like to kind of do just like a drop shadow effect there on the shoe. I don't personally, so. Next we just gotta do the belt loops and the little piece of pants. Well, actually, this is supposed to be brown. Whoops. So I just kind of made it look like the belt continued. We're gonna go ahead and just quickly do the jean loops. Okay, so for the belt loops, we're just gonna like hide our texture just so we can see what we're grabbing here. And we're gonna grab the darkest color, and then we're just gonna like kind of create a gradient type deal here, and just grab the colors. There we go, something like that. And if you want, just go to the pattern layer, and then just repeat the grid pattern. That way you also have that texture carried onto your belt loop. This one would be like a drastic difference because it's such a small piece, so. But it does add a little bit of dimension, it's just kind of hard to tell. Now, you need to do the belt. Belt is pretty easy, honestly. Probably one of the easiest things, as long as you don't do a super detailed belt. And belts you kind of do a little bit different. Not too much different though. We're just gonna create our new layer, and don't be like me and just like create them and never name them. Name them. It saves you a lot of heartache or stress or whatever, and makes things more organized. So, we're gonna grab the belt color, and the belt. Basically, you know, if when it's wrapped around you, the further back the darker it's gonna get, the further to the front, the lighter it is. So, in a way, it'd be kind of like a radial gradient, if that makes sense, that we're gonna create. And we're going to start with the darkest color and just kind of like in the back, just kind of like, you know, make a round swoop, you know, if that makes sense. Also going to like just to like add a little bit of a shadow under the belt loop, but only on one side, because well, actually Go ahead and add on both sides, I guess. We're gonna add, like, a shadow to the belt buckle as well. Actually, that part don't. Okay, there we go. We're just gonna add the shadow. Okay, so that's the darkest part. And then we're going to lighten that up significantly. Because our original color is lighter, obviously. Alright, so this is going to be the darkest, obviously. So this is going to be second darkest. And then this part we're going to want to be brighter. And we're going to, like, avoid going over our shadows for the belt loops. Because it's kind of like a little bit of a drop shadow to give it a little bit more depth, but it's probably not going to be too noticeable since it's so small. And, yeah, here you can just use the paint bucket. Same with this, or you don't even have to color it at all, really, but I do it for, like, visual, because it's easier for me to mentally process, so. Then we're gonna go brighter, of course. And then we're going to start up here. We're just gonna gradually make this belt lighter. And then we zoom out. Let me deselect this so you can see it better. There you go, it has a bit of a gradient. So it kind of looks like it's more wrapped around. And that these have like a depth to them. And also, if you're going to do a textured belt, mine's a leather belt, so I'm just going to keep it smooth. If you're doing a textured belt, do like similar checker pattern. If you're going to do a fabric belt, I should say. If you do a fabric belt, just do the same, repeat the same thing with the checkers. So now I'm going to grab all of this. And we're going to do like multiple flips. Wait, actually, I'll grab this. I made a little bit of a mistake actually now I'm looking at this. Just a tiny one. This is easy fix. So I kind of made my shoe just a tad too small widthwise, so I'm just gonna add all this stuff. There we go. You can also set the not the part picker, the dropper. You can switch this to pencil tool or previous tool. That makes things easier, and just hit like K. I'm just going to basically select all the stuff that is shaded for the pants here. And I'm basically just going to copy it and flip it over. And just make sure that it's not, like, blurred. Like, make sure you flipped it correctly. Which, it can be kind of tricky to tell if you did. If you did like me. Because I kind of messed up on, separating my stuff. It happens, honestly, so. I believe I just need to, like, move that over a pixel. I probably shouldn't have erased my center line. That's what I shouldn't have done. There we go. So that's the other half here. So that means need to extend my shoes, but I'm gonna do that. I'll fix my shoes in a moment here. And we're just gonna keep on selecting all this. Just line it up. Don't need to mirror the pattern. We do need to mirror the line work. So I have this gap in my middle of my shoes here, so all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna select my shoes. This is why we put stuff on different layers. We're just gonna scooch them over just a little bit so we can like center them, because if you remember, I added a little bit to my right side of this shoe. So we're going to add some to the other side. So we're going to scoot these in. So we want to even these out. And then I'm just going to do the same thing as I did earlier. Just extend out the line work and shading by a pixel. Luckily, it's just a little bit, not something crazy. This is kind of why it's best to use the anti-analyzing disabled too, because if we had it with it enabled, it'd be harder to fix this. So now we have our shoes fixed, and we have this double here that we don't want. So we're just going to basically erase the other side. Let's bring this part up. There we go. And we actually want to bring this line over because this needs to be thicker. There we go. Now we have the zipper, we have our pants shaded, we also have our belt shading transferred. The only thing that isn't over here is the texture, and you just repeat the texture on the pattern layer. Make sure to do it on the pattern layer, just repeat the checker layer. And, well, you also have the right color, apparently, so make sure you have the right color, too. So, get the color, repeat checkers. So, what we're going to do now that we have everything shaded down here on the legs, we're going to save as, but don't save just yet. We're going to go to PNG and name this name this, like, I don't know, something entirely different from what your actual file is from everything else. Just name it something entirely different. And save it in a place you can find it. Click OK, flatten. And it's going to flatten this. So once you have this flattened, we are going to drag this up. And we're going to line it up with the side here, at the bottom of the side. We're going to grab this. We're going to copy this. And on your pant template, we're going to open up the pant template and then create a new layer. Control V to bring in the pants. And then the flattened original, we're going to Control Z this, so that brings all your layers back here. And then back to the pants, we're going to select the one half of the legs pants out here. And then we're going to line that up, just like that. And do the same thing here. Now, what's important is make note of what you did with the checkers, because we are going to have to copy those to the pattern to the other legs. So just keep that in mind. Write it down in a notepad or something of what you did. Like select the darkest layer and, checkers down to 1 or whatever. Just keep a note that what you did so that you can repeat it. Or if you don't do any textures, you can just repeat that effect. And so here's our pants. And now what we're going to do is just clean the pants off of this, because we don't need these anymore on here. And so you should have your shading, your line work all right here. And you shouldn't have your pants over here. And now what we have left is to shade the rest of this stuff. So everything else is going to be pretty much the same process. You're going to put the wrinkles, and you want to, in the areas that are going to be the same, like the left and right side, left, right side, just gonna mirror it, and we're just going to shade all of the wrinkles and such into each thing, or shade it flat. And it's just going to be a similar process with everything else at this point. So, at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and shade the rest of this, and I'll get back with you. since I have this stripe, what I want to do is I want to carry it over to the back because I want it to be continued over, not just cut off at the neck randomly. So we're just going to go to the layer that has the stripe, and if you have it like merged in there somewhere, you probably want to just select the stripe or something like that, but it should be on its own layer. Just try to keep everything on its own layer and you'll be okay. And so what we're going to do is actually go to our torso and copy over the stripe, since the torso and the back are obviously the same size. And we'll just select it over here. I would have to test this, but I unfortunately don't have premium, but I think you have to like flip it and then bring this other stripe to the other side. This is 1, 2, 3 pixel gap, so 1, 2, 3. Select. Okay, so what we're going to do, for this like torso bottom part here, we're just going to grab the darkest shade of our pant shading that isn't the checker, and then we're just going to select this area and make sure this is filled in that color. And I mean, you could shade this, but it's kind of pointless. It's just this underneath here, and sometimes this like curls up over the like this back inside and stuff, and so sometimes it kind of cuts into this, unfortunately. And you could try it in theory to like line everything up, but in the end, it's going to be way more difficult than it's worth. So, in my opinion, just save yourself the time and the heartache and just color it the darkest shade. Because in the end, that's just going to be the best thing you can do. And we're just going to do the same thing over here as well, on the tops of the legs, and just gonna paint over the U, so we don't need that either. And then now all we have left is the bottoms of the shoes, and you can like either try and get really detailed and try to draw the bottom of the shoe, but what I typically do is I just go to the bottom color of my shoe and I select this, and I'm gonna fill it in, deselect, paint this, and then after I paint this, what I like to do is I like to select these, and then I like to go to render, and then I like to go to grid lines. Actually, I should put this on black first, my bad. You may want to put this on a new layer too. So I'm gonna go to render, grid lines, and then I like to remove the horizontal so that we have just the vertical. And then just kind of make it look like that, I guess. And that way, that kind of gives you a little bit of detail in your shoes. It's kind of like, almost like the bottom of Sandy's boots. So, yeah, I'll just do that, usually. And then you don't really need to do anything up here unless, like, let's say you want to have something like this just in the torso. So let's say you're just making a tank top, no sleeves or anything. It's just this middle piece right here that's shown in this image. You can make that, And that way you could just sell these as pants. You don't even need to have a shirt. And then somebody could wear a different top or something over if they want. If you're wanting to do something just here in the middle, you do the torso here. Or you could just leave it as is, or you could do what I like to do. And we're just going to save this as t-shirt with the jeans, I guess. And then save this as PNG. We will select this whole thing here. And then we're going to, bam. And then, last thing we need to do is make sure to erase all this crap under the, t-shirt. Because we want that transparency. If you have the checkers, checkers are good. That's what you want. You want the checkers. Because that means you have the transparency there, and that's a good thing. So just keep that in mind. Checkers are good if you want transparency. And, top of the legs here, we'd need to do the same thing as we did earlier. We need to grab the darkest color. That is not the darkest color. Darkest color. Guess I already did that. But then we also need to select these. New layer. Effects. Make sure you still have the darkest color. And then we're going to go to grid, checker maker. Make sure you have all of the correct things selected. Render it. And then we're going to do multiply. We'll make it darker. Same opacity. And then we have the checkered jean texture there. And then we basically are done. We have the shirt, the pants, and everything. So now, just to show you guys the final product, basically, since I can't upload it, unfortunately, I don't have premium, I'm going to make sure this is saved. We're going to save this as PNG, and it is important that you do PNG. And I'm going to stress that, because PNG allows you to have the transparency, and I see so many people do this. They do JPEG, and then they have this white stuff in here. And if you're gonna send this to somebody, send it, like, let's say you're doing this as a business, use Imgur, or however it's pronounced, this right here. You'll just create a new post. And then you would put the file here, and you give the link to the files to the person. So I'd like to choose the photo, and then I would go like jeans. You might have to watch an ad. And you'd give the copied link to them on like Discord or whatever, and they'd put in the link. And what you'd want them to do is click download. Don't right click and save image as. No, you go to the dots and then download. Because this keeps the original dimensions, the original transparency, it keeps it a PNG. Or it should, rather. So we're going to go to our downloads, and then we're just going to take a look at this. Actually, what I'm going to do... So we're going to go to paint.net just to verify. Yes, here's our download file right here. So, file, open, downloads, and then, yeah, it should still show this checkered background once you open it in paint.net. That's how you know it's done it correctly. And nothing... And the other thing is the detail is not distorted. So that's how you give your friends or your clients the file without it being messed up is you make sure that they do download. Don't right click save as, because if you don't do download, it's not going to keep the original file. And so once they have done that, they have downloaded the file. Do not close the original link, but mind you. And so once they have downloaded it, instantly delete post so that nobody else can have the original file. And that's how you would give it to somebody. You don't send it over Discord because you'll lose the correct size of resolution or file type. So that is the best way to give the clothing to somebody. Here's the outfit fully uploaded. Thanks to my friend Sarah. I was correct about the stripe on the back. However, you didn't need to move over the little line. So it's a little bit off, but it's not terribly noticeable. You can't see it right now because of my backpack in the way, but you can see a little bit right there that the stripe should be over here. But yeah, as you can see, Roblox, they kind of like shrink panels and such when you upload it. So like this is a little bit off, as you can see. But, on the template, we have it lined up perfectly. So it's going to happen. It's really unavoidable. But, yep, this is it. And if you guys are interested in purchasing this, I also have a variant with dark jeans. If you're interested in it, I'll have the link down in the description below. And I also have a template made for you guys, so it's a little bit easier for you guys to manage.